that British guy, and welcome to the first ever WWETube, where I review Raw and Smackdown based purely on the YouTube videos on the WWE YouTube channel. Let's get started straight away and begin with Raw. Raw started off with Roman Reigns in the ring, and he was addressing the audience regarding his announcement to do with SummerSlam. Basically said because he's beaten all there is to beat, he will be the #1 contender at SummerSlam for the Universal title against either Brock Lesnar or Joe. And this annoyed Samoa Joe quite a lot. He came down to the ring. Few words said, and quite a good brawl, I thought, between the two of them. Samoa Joe looked really strong. It's just a shame that Roman Reigns got the upper hand at the end, because of course he did. He's Roman Reigns. I think it would have been better had Samoa Joe sort of outdone him here. Would have just made him look that much stronger going into his match at Great Balls of Fire with Brock Lesnar. Moving on from that, we had the match between the Hardys and the Club. Both teams looked really, really good. Matt especially looked really on form. From what I saw of it, he was a lot more involved in the match than Jeff was. The Club were quite conniving. Delivered the boot of doom to Matt, and he kicked out, which makes the move look a bit weak, to be honest. Probably would have been better if Jeff had broken up the 3 count instead of Matt just kicking out of it. After all, it's a double team move. They're supposed to really finish people off. And then it was just the usual twist of fate, swanton finish. Hardys needed it. Well, I suppose needed it if they're staying in the title hunt with Sheamus and Cesaro. It's just a shame that it came at the expense of the Club, who, although they look good, get beaten again. Where do they really go from here? It's a bit of a shame for them. Next, we move on to the promo that Goldust delivered, and I thought this was top class. Really sort of perfect mid to late 90s style Goldust. Quite sinister, but there was some real intent there, and I hope that this mini feud with R-Truth, they're going to get their first confrontation since the split next week. I hope that he sort of dispatches of R-Truth quite quickly, and to be honest, I hope it really does lead to maybe one final Intercontinental title run. I think that would be quite a nice send-off for Goldust after all that he's done. I think he deserves it. And yeah, I just think that would be nice to see. So here's hoping. Moving on, we get the section Elias Sampson in the ring, just riling up the audience. And then it gets interrupted by Finn Balor. This was really confusing. I mean, it led into the Finn Balor-Bo Dallas match, but Sampson just walked off and just left him to it, which struck me as a bit odd. Granted, he sort of rectified that later in the evening, but just seemed a bit odd at the time. The actual match then between Balor and Bo Dallas, one of the strongest performances I've seen from Bo Dallas in I don't know how long. He was just seemed like a man possessed. It was then a shame that Balor got a few sort of big moves in and won the match, really. I think it might have been better had Sampson returned and distracted Finn Balor, or maybe sort of attacked him and given Balor the DQ win, or maybe even just let Bo Dallas go crazy on Balor on the outside and get disqualified for not answering the 10 count or using a weapon or something. Balor still gets a win. Yeah, it's an odd one. The match didn't really do anything for me, and I don't really think it helped Bo. It didn't help Balor, really, because he's just beating a jobber, and it made Sampson look really weak and cowardly, to be honest, because he didn't even get a swing in at Balor, but there we go. Moving on, next we get the section with Seth Rollins in the ring talking about the 2K18 cover and release of that, and then he did his usual redemption speech shtick to the crowd about how I need to sort of repent for what I've done and thank you for believing in me again, blah 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 blah, that we heard so many times. It was good at the beginning, but it's just a bit tedious now. We've heard it quite a few times. He then gets interrupted by Bray Wyatt, who basically says that you're a liar, you're a hypocrite, you've done all these dastardly things, and now because you're putting on a smile and playing to the crowd, you expect everyone to just sort of forget about that and pretend like it never happened, which was, for a heel, maybe a bit too honest, to be honest. But there we go. He then tried to rush the ring in probably the slowest rush of the ring I think I've ever seen. One leap from Seth Rollins leaves him on the floor. Seth Rollins leaves looking stronger than Bray Wyatt, who's just sort of then sitting down by ringside, laughing his head off maniacally. No, didn't really do anything for me. It's kind of pointless. Really just an advert probably for the game, in all honesty. Yeah, so yeah, that's all I've got for that one, really. Moving on, after that we get the repercussions of Finn Balor interrupting Samson. He's being interviewed backstage, and Elias Samson jumps him, gets a few shots in on him, and says to him, "Don't you ever upstage me again," and walks off, and that was the end of it. So is this a feud now? Do we get a feud between Samson and Balor, which seems odd because it's Samson's first feud since coming up from NXT, so really he could do with winning it. Granted, it's good that he's in a program potentially with somebody as big as Finn, but Finn can't really be losing to Samson, can he really? So I just can't see what Finn Balor would gain from beating somebody like him, and I can't see Samson winning. So yeah, okay, he gets to have some ring time with Finn Balor, but ultimately he's going to lose. It kind of really doesn't go anywhere for me, and this attack I think should have happened during the Finn Balor and Bo Dallas match, but what can you do? Then we get the match between Akira Tozawa and TJP, and Akira Tozawa being sort of bigged up by Titus O'Neil, trying to entice him into the Titus brand. Nice little match for what it was. One of the better showings from a cruiserweight match on Raw that certainly I've been aware of in recent weeks. Nice as well that they're using the whole Titus brand, not just with Apollo Crews, trying to actually really turn it into a big brand, so recruit other members to it. Obviously this then riles Neville up, so it kind of makes Akira Tozawa feel like more of a big deal, more of a threat, because Neville is sort of keeping an eye on him. And yeah, Tozawa gets the win against TJP. Looks quite good doing it. It's also pretty good for Titus O'Neil being Akira Tozawa's mouthpiece, because of obviously language barrier issues. So yeah, there was a bit of back and forth between, well, Tozawa and Titus O'Neil really, and Neville to sort of hype up their title match. So yeah, I'd not the sort of highlight of the show, but I think everyone sort of benefited from it, with maybe the exception of TJP, but what can you do? You can't push everyone at once. So no, that's quite nice. Nice little feud there. Looking forward to seeing what Tozawa and Neville do in their title match. Next we get the promo from R-Truth, basically answering Goldust's call for an encounter next week. It was very impassioned. I thought it was a very good response to Goldust's promo. It wasn't as strong as Goldust's promo, but it sort of heightens the intrigue for next week. I have a feeling they're going to go hell for leather in some kind of brawl. that then sets up a proper match at Great Balls of Fire. Hopefully it will be a one and done and Goldust can move on to other things, as I said, possibly even the IC title down the line. But no, I think they've built it up enough, and now we're going to get the encounter on the go home show before the pay-per-view, and then the match at the pay-per-view. I think that's a nice little build there. Following that, we get a few bits and pieces with Brock Lesnar and Samoa Joe, and especially like the 50s element to this. Okay, we've got Great Balls of Fire as a pay-per-view name, but at least they're going all in with it. We got the sort of drive-in cinema type element to it. They even had the song, but especially with Paul Heyman's voiceover from the promos that he's done as a sort of a voiceover for the package, made both guys look really, really strong, and yeah, sort of built towards their match at Great Balls of Fire, and Brock Lesnar returning next week keeps the fans interested, and as well as the promo with Brock Lesnar where he's being interviewed, it was nice that he was doing all the talking instead of Paul Heyman for once. Yeah, it just heightens the anticipation for their match, and should be a good one. It's a shame that, again, that will probably be a one and done. Samoa Joe will probably lose, and Brock Lesnar will move on to likely Braun Strowman at SummerSlam, but at least we get the match, so what can you do there, really? Next, we get the sequence between The Miz and Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel in the locker room at the back. The Miz obviously worried about sort of retaining his IC title, and worried about Dean Ambrose and what's going on with the conflict between The Miz and Maurice, and feeling like he's probably going to lose her helping him, so he wants to make sure that he's got somebody supporting him. So trying to recruit them, I think that's a brilliant idea, nice underhanded heel move from him, and should give Bo and Curtis Axel something to do, which will be good, even if it's just lackeys, it gets back on screen, so I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. This then led into a Miz TV sequence where Miz was trying to apologise to Maurice and looked like he'd won her over, and then as soon as Dean Ambrose comes down, without even really doing anything, the Miz sort of makes a fool of himself, tries to use Maurice as a shield, and then accidentally breaks the grandfather clock that he had fixed. She then walks out on him, and just as it looks like Dean Ambrose has got the upper hand on the Miz again, it turns out the two bears that are in the ring are Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, and they attack Dean Ambrose. Miz finishes them off with a skull-crushing finale and looks strong at the end of it. Nice heelish tactics from him. Great segment overall. Dean looked like he'd got the upper hand, and then Miz with heelish tactics managed to sort of one-up him by recruiting a couple of henchmen. Nice little sequence, that. Next we move on to the match between Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns. It's a pretty solid looking match. They both looked very even. Samoa Joe scouting Roman, and avoiding the Superman punch by rolling out the ring, and after he gets the spear, has the wherewithal to put his foot on the rope. Quite clever tactics by him, showing his ring smarts. And then Braun Strowman comes down to the ring out the back of an ambulance, and that distraction allows Samoa Joe to lock in the Coquina Clutch, and surprisingly Roman Reigns loses a singles match, which was quite nice to see, to be honest. It was a shame that it was a distraction that caused Samoa Joe to win, but at least he did win. It was fairly clean because Roman was still sort of aware of what was going on, and it's not like Joe sort of attacked him with a weapon or on the outside. He just locked it in, dragged him to the mat, and Roman passed out. And then this led to Braun Strowman basically picking him up and throwing him about like a rag doll, and announcing an ambulance match between the two of them at Great Balls of Fire. Now, with Roman Reigns at the beginning of the show saying that he is the number one contender for the Universal title at SummerSlam, I have a feeling that Braun Strowman will probably win this ambulance match and then declare himself the number one contender, because it's still heavily suspected that he will go on to face Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam for the Universal title, because he was meant to at Great Balls of Fire but couldn't because of his injury. So I have a feeling that will become a number one contenders match, and Braun Strowman will hopefully absolutely destroy Roman Reigns. Then we go on to the tag match between Sheamus and Cesaro against Titus O'Neil and Apollo Crews. And it was an okay match. Titus and Apollo looked fairly strong, but obviously against the tag champions you knew they were never really going to prevail. And sneak attack, I think by Cesaro on the outside, allowed Sheamus and Cesaro to get the win. So mixed bag for the Titus brand this week. Good with the cruiserweights, but not so good in their tag match. So it'll be interesting to see how that builds from there in the coming weeks. After that, we get the women's match between Sasha Banks and Nia Jax. And wow, what the hell was the point of any of this, really? It was a ridiculously short match. Alexa Bliss comes in and is basically bad-mouthing everyone. Emma then jumps her on commentary because of Alexa Bliss running out on the tag match the week before, so they get in a bit of a scuffle. Alexa Bliss then tries to hide behind Nia Jax, who basically puts her in the firing line, and Emma, in trying to attack Alexa, then hits Nia Jax because Alexa ducks out of the way. So nice little bit for her. Makes her look sort of conniving and sort of on the level with The Miz, really. And then it just turned into a here's all the women in a multi-person brawl. Out come Dana Brooke and Mickie James to try and even the odds, and then Bayley comes out, and although she looks strong, and it's about time Bayley looks strong, what is gained from any of this, really? Alexa Bliss manages to scurry away again. Because Bayley looked the strongest, does that mean that she is going to face Alexa Bliss again? Really kind of directionless, really. It just felt like a let's get all the women in the ring at once and just, there we go, that'll do. Pointless, to be honest. Moving on to the end of the show, we got the attacker of Enzo and Cass revealed. So we had Kurt Angle come down to the ring, and he brings the two guys out and introduces everyone to the lead suspects, Big Show and the Revival. And basically we find out that it's neither of those, and thanks to Corey Graves showing us some footage of Cass not really getting attacked, we find out, surprise surprise, that Cass attacked Enzo, and who didn't see that one coming. It was a good promo from Cass, very truthful what he was saying, really, that he's basically been sort of holding Enzo aloft and carrying him through. So it's quite justified in his heel turn, strangely enough. One big boot to the head, and then that was it. It was a bit... yeah, very predictable. And I just think it would have been maybe a bit better next week for the go-home show, and then that could have led to a match between the two of them. Maybe with Kurt Angle sort of calling out, this is the person that attacked Enzo, and then Enzo and Cass's music hit, kind of confusing everyone, and they both come out together because they both want to find out who it is. And then halfway down the ramp, maybe Cass blindsides Enzo and completely obliterates him. I don't know. It just felt, when they were all in there together, and you knew it wasn't the Big Show, and you knew it wasn't the Revival, and then Corey Graves steps up and's like, I know who it is. It just so obvious. So pointless. Not a patch on the DIY breakup at TakeOver. So yeah, what can you do? It was a bit of a dud way to finish the episode. Moving on now to SmackDown Live, and wow, after the controversy, shall we say, at Money in the Bank, we get an opening segment from Carmella and James Ellsworth that was probably the best thing I think I've seen Carmella do. She was very justified and impassioned about what had happened at Money in the Bank. And although I don't particularly agree with how WWE did it, basically saying, I don't care, I've been overlooked, I deserve this opportunity, screw you. And it seemed like WWE were just basically saying, you know what, we've planned this, we've booked it, we're going to run with it. It doesn't matter really if you don't like it, because really at the end it's been trending worldwide. People have been talking about it, and they say that there's sort of no such thing as bad press. As long as you're getting press, then who the hell cares if it's positive or negative? They are in the spotlight because of what happened. And it was, although I didn't like how it went at Money in the Bank, it seemed like, okay, they're going to go with this, fine. And they both looked really, really good in the ring with it, and was quite excited to see what was going to happen with this. We then get a few segments throughout the night with Daniel Bryan discussing the situation with the other women that were in the Money in the Bank ladder match. To be honest, the only bit that really looked real and genuine was the Becky Lynch segment. It was a little bit OTT with her getting upset, but it felt the most real and the most honest. And it seemed like he wasn't sure what he was going to be doing with it, and it just added that little extra layer of intrigue going on. The first match of the night was between Big E and Jimmy Uso, and both looked really, really strong, especially Big E just throwing Jimmy around. Nice little super kick by Jimmy Uso to Xavier Woods as he's trying to get the crowd behind Big E and the New Day. I thought that was a nice touch. Leading again to Jimmy basically rolling out the ring and Jay collecting him and saying, you know what, screw this. We don't need this. We left on Sunday with our titles by walking out. We're going to do it again. Nice little callback to that. And nice as well that Kofi and Xavier basically put the brakes on that. Got Jimmy back in the ring and allowed Big E to pick up the win. It makes the Usos still look sort of dastardly and cowardly. It makes the New Day look strong straight away after their loss. Well, after their DQ win, but losses in not getting the titles. So it's good that they got a proper clean victory. I have a feeling that this will then lead to a rematch at Battleground, which will probably then see the Usos maybe losing by disqualification this time, like attacking the ref or hitting one of the New Day with a chair and retaining their titles again, which will then probably lead to another rematch at SummerSlam where New Day finally pick up the titles, just to keep the program going a couple of months, because I think that'll be quite a nice little build, and it'll probably be New Day winning in something like a Falls Count Anywhere match or a ladder match or cage match or something, just to take out the element of the Usos can't cheat to win. They have to win clean in order to retain their title. So I think that'll be quite a nice little program for them going forward. Next, we get the interview from Randy Orton, basically sort of admitting to his shortcomings at Money in the Bank, and really it was sort of a more that he lost rather than Jinder won, which I kind of understand what they were doing, because obviously he was so focused on the Singh brothers because they were trying to attack his father, but it kind of made Jinder seem weaker in that respect. I know obviously he's got henchmen and he keeps winning by distractions and things, but to make the WWE champion appear weaker than the challenger, especially when it is Jinder, and in the eyes of everyone he's weaker anyway, I feel like it needed more from sort of Randy Orton trying to put over Jinder's cunning and Jinder's cleverness. He tried to, but it just didn't really fit. The most interesting thing being he said he was going to go to Jinder's homeland and attack his family. So look forward, Canada, to seeing Randy Orton somewhere near you very soon. Next, we got the match between Nakamura and Dolph Ziggler, and this was a very, very good match. The best showing probably of Nakamura since he's come on to the main roster. Much better than their Backlash match. Very, very hard hitting as well. Some of the shots looked like they were really, really causing damage to Ziggler. So I hope between the two of them that was sort of well planned out, because some of those shots looked pretty gnarly. But yeah, the only thing to say with this is where does it go? Do we then still get a program between Nakamura and Ziggler? Because I thought that Nakamura, or it looked like Nakamura was going into a program with Owens and potentially the US title, given that he'd pinned him for the few weeks preceding Money in the Bank. But that seems to have been passed over for Nakamura and Ziggler again. But hey, what can you do? Speaking of Kevin Owens, he then issues an open challenge, much like every single US title holder seems to do. And is interrupted by AJ Styles, who still feels that he is in the hunt, especially as he got screwed over at Backlash. And Kevin Owens basically shooting him down and saying, no, this open challenge is for a local wrestler. And then we get Chad Gable and Kevin Owens. Chad Gable claiming that he'd moved to the area that morning of Daytona. He'd moved there that morning, so he was now a local boy. And like all other local wrestlers, he loses in his, well, shall we say, hometown. I thought it was a very, very good showing from him. It's nice to see American Alpha, or at least in this case, one of American Alpha, back on TV. Kevin Owens took quite a lot of offense from what I saw, but then managed to get a couple of strong attacks in. Pop-up powerbomb, 1, 2, 3, done. So I presume we're going to get at Battleground the second match between AJ Styles and Kevin Owens. Whether they tease Nakamura in there as well because he pinned Kevin Owens, I don't know. Probably not, because I have a feeling they're going to try and keep AJ and Nakamura away from each other as long as they can, at least until maybe SummerSlam or Survivor Series, because they've only just had that initial meeting at Money in the Bank. So who knows where that's going to go. Probably with Kevin Owens keeping hold of it and maybe then moving on to Nakamura for SummerSlam. Who knows? Then finally we get the address of Daniel Bryan. He brings out all of the women involved in the Money in the Bank ladder match, and obviously James Ellsworth as well. And they're, even his bit of promo here is usually quite good. It just went on and on and on, and the more it went on, the more it seemed obvious where it was going. He then takes the briefcase from Carmella, and basically then we get another multi-women brawl, just like we did on Raw, with Becky Lynch and Charlotte sort of standing tall over Carmella. I have a feeling that because she took the brunt of the beatdown, we'll probably then get in the Money in the Bank rematch next week, we'll get Carmella probably winning again. Just really, if it felt at the beginning of the night that they were just going to go with it and say, okay, maybe we didn't book that as well as we should do, but screw it, we're going to go, we've decided it, we're going to go with it. People might not be happy with it, but we're just going to press on anyway. We're going to be sort of determined to stick by our guns and move forward. And this backtracking, especially if Carmella wins it next week, it just feels absolutely pointless. Really what they should have done is either had Carmella properly win it at Money in the Bank, maybe with just James Ellsworth holding Becky Lynch back or just tipping the ladder over and then letting Carmella have her moment. Or if they were going to do this whole, it just feels like a restart thing, it should have happened on the night. Somebody should have come out and said, this isn't happening like this. James Ellsworth is not a member of this match. Put the briefcase back up on the hook, get rid of James Ellsworth, restart the match, and then 5 minutes later, Carmella wins it anyway. Having it delayed by a week is just, it's so pointless. If you've made your decision, stick with it. Because this just makes either the booking weak or really unsure. They should have just stuck with their guns or done it properly in the first place. Anyway, moving on. The last match, or the last section of the night, was the match between Luke Harper and Jinder Mahal. Yeah, it was alright, I suppose. Bit of Singh interference again when Harper was trying to get the upper hand. He looked pretty good, to be honest. The tease by Baron Corbin, trying to catch out Jinder Mahal, then led to more Singh interference in order for him to get the upper hand again and pin Luke Harper off of the Colossus, which seems to be the most devastating move ever, because it only ever needs one hit of it and then you're down. And then Randy Orton coming out again and basically batting the Singh brothers around like they're ping pong balls. Yeah, the match itself wasn't too bad. Orton coming out and destroying them was quite fun to watch, to be honest, and obviously Jinder Mahal used them as a sacrificial, or couple of sacrificial lambs in order to escape. Yeah, I suppose that was okay. It's a shame that that program is carrying on. I feel like Jinder needs a new challenger now, because if they take the title straight back off of him already, I don't think they've really kept it on him long enough for the Jinder Mahal project to really come into effect yet. And I think he needs to to establish himself as a proper, credible champion. He needs to move on to somebody else and beat them, even if it is heelishly, hopefully not with yet another copy and paste finish like we got at Backlash and Money in the Bank, but needs to dispatch of somebody else and just say, look, I've beaten Randy Orton, I've beaten whoever, and then probably win again, maybe at SummerSlam, and beat somebody else in that. Even if it is somebody like AJ Styles, he can use that to really establish himself as one of the top heels on SmackDown Live and a proper credible champion. Because facing Randy Orton again, yes, okay, he's 14 time champion, and has been around for, 13 years? 14 years? 12 years? 13 years, I think. You've beaten one guy 3 times. Great. You've scouted one guy and you keep using the Singh brothers to win, but there we go. My final thought on SmackDown was no Mike and Maria Kanellis, which seemed odd. No promo section from them, no addressing the crowd, not even coming out and watching a match sort of at ringside or anything. It kind of made their appearance at Money in the Bank pointless, really. Maybe sort of a video package at Money in the Bank and then them actually appearing tonight would have been a bit more impactful. I don't know, it just, especially if this goes on in the weeks to come, just seemed a bit strange to me, but there we go. Final thoughts on Raw and SmackDown. Definitely Raw winning over SmackDown, I think. Not necessarily the matches, because I think the match of the week, Ziggler-Nakamura, even though it's been done a few times now. But certainly the out-of-ring sections of Raw seemed a lot more solid, especially the bits with The Miz and the packages between Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar were really solid. And as opposed to the women's Money in the Bank flip-flopping stuff where they seemed like they were going to go with what they decided and then backtracking just to get a rematch. It is just, yeah, weak, really, from their point of view. So I would say show of the week, definitely Raw. What do you think? Do you think SmackDown was better? Do you think Raw was better this week? Were there any sections that I didn't cover? I mean, I covered everything that was on the YouTube channel. Were there any sections, important sections, that WWE missed out that were in the episodes that I didn't get to see? I was going to say being shortchanged, but obviously I'm watching them for free. Am I missing out on sections here? Let me know if there were any bits that I couldn't review because I didn't get to see them on the YouTube channel. Were there any bits that I've mentioned where you think, well, actually, you've missed out a whole chunk of that? Let me know, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.